The word giant is never mentioned in the Hebrew text. There are men of great statures, not statues, stature. There are mighty men. There's these adjectives that talk about what these people look like. We were like grasshoppers to them. They were as tall as cedars. So those kinds of descriptive terms help us understand that the Nephilim and their descendants were giants. And I've tried to make that connection. And to be frank with you, I was going to look at the video and find out exactly where I left off. Remember that this is found just on the other side of Galilee. And this is the area, that's the Golan Heights. This is the area that Caleb was going to conquer. Joshua didn't quite conquer it all. It's one of the unconquered territories. You'll find it in the book of Judges. This was the territory that Jesus went across, and the demon was across there, and it's called the Gerasenes. It's the area of the 10 cities, the Decapolis, because it's a hedonistic Gentile area, and it's just a demonic area, really. And if you look, the Mount Hermon, we talked about Mount Hermon being just north of that. So the Golan Heights are kind of large foothills that lead up toward Mount Hermon. And this whole area from here on up is the high places, the places of Baal, the places of Ashtoreth. And just I want to reiterate this idea, because Gary's going through it. And on Sunday, we're touching on it a little bit on Sunday morning behind the pulpit, that we think about these idols that people make and they bow down to them, and we say, even these people said 3,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago now, they would be absolutely 5,000. They would be brilliant people. Why are they bowing to stone? But the idea is the deity behind the stone. They're making an image in the image of the deity. That's why they made an image of the bull. They made an image of Baal all the time, image of Diana. That's why when the Roman emperor, he would put his image on the coin. That's the same word, by the way, that Paul uses, that Jesus came in the image of man and he was the image of God. So you see what they're doing? And that's why God said, don't make an image. Don't make an image. Because it's not the stone, it's not the wood, it's what is behind it. And that is important to understand. Because we think, well, that's ancient and we don't do that. Well, I beg to differ. Because we have idols and we set up images, and we take part in these kinds of things, and it's the image, it's the being, the demon, or the idea behind that image, okay? So I hope that makes some sense. Okay, now everybody's got their sheets. I forgot to bring them out, but I know there was a few people here, not here last week. Would you go get the pile of sheets that are sitting on the desk for me? Actually, if you just give them to Laura. And there's a new page 50, and then you want from page 50 on, okay? So that's kind of where we're at. And I apologize if I don't know exactly where I left off, so is that okay? Is there anybody out there? Okay. So my note says I left off here, so I'm just going to take off here if that's okay. So the Nephilim were on the earth afterwards. And so the results, the Nephilim, are the results of the sin of Genesis 1:6:1, okay? They're half human and half fallen angel. Now, at some point, we're probably going to get into a discussion between a fallen angel and a demon. Are there differences? Just briefly, Chuck Missler makes a very good point about some differences, but it still makes it hard to understand. He makes the case that whenever you see a demon working in the Bible, one of the characteristics of the demon is that he always wants to possess, or it always wants to possess another flesh, another human being. Remember the ones that Jesus cast out, and they wanted to possess the pigs, okay? And if we need to run some more off, I can certainly do that. So demons want to possess, whereas it looks like the angels just appeared as human beings. Does that make sense? You know, when the three characters, and one of them was God incarnate, when he appeared to Abraham, the three strangers show up. So the point is that there are some differences, but I'm not going to go so far as to say that fallen angels are not demons. I think that they probably are. I think that they have the ability to possess. I think they have the ability to possess. And again, going back to Genesis chapter 3, I think Satan possessed the snake. I think he will possess the Antichrist, the beast, the man. Okay? So just keep that in mind as we go. We don't have those things figured out, but that just kind of makes sense. So this is the link now, okay? Here's how we make the link. Genesis 6 talks about the Nephilim were on the earth and also afterwards. So we made the case that the Nephilim are, they come afterwards, and here's how they come. Here's what happens, okay? Deuteronomy 2:11, Israel's going through the land like God told them, and they come up a tribe called the Anakim. The Anakim. And he said, like the Anakim, they are also counted as Rephaim. But the Moabites call them Emim. So there's three words, three titles of those beings in that verse right there. They're the Rephaim, the Anakim, and the Emim. Okay? In Job 26:5, the dead tremble under the waters and their inhabitants. In the English, we don't know how to go. If you look at the Septuagint, that probably says giants. Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, put giants almost everywhere. There was Rephaim, there was Anakim, some of these others. They put giants just everywhere. The word is gigantes. Now, honestly, in the Greek language, gigantes doesn't mean giant. No, see, in the English, giant means big. Gigantes in the Greek means earthborn or something to that effect. Okay, earthbound, something to that effect. Okay, so that's the Greek terminology. All right, just so we know now. Okay. Now, Proverbs 2:18 says, her house sinks down to death and her paths to the departed. That word there, departed, is Rephaim. So now you can kind of get a picture. You can kind of get a picture that in Job, they're dead. In Proverbs, they're dead. They're the departed. Okay? There's another one, and I don't know if I have it here. In Psalms, it says they will never rise again. Okay? The word giants has no Old Testament equivalent except, again, for comparisons or descriptive terms like men of stature. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Now, I think we're on page... Can you tell me what page we're on? Are we on 48 or... 50, are we on 50? Okay, we're on 50. Okay. All right. Verse... Yeah.
So that Job 26.
Yeah.
The dead, or Rephaim, tremble under the waters in their inhabitants.
Yeah.
What is that? Does that mean they're
Yeah.
under the altar.
Yeah.
Is that what it means?
Yeah. Yeah. And see, I mean, and Gary and I have talked a little bit about this. You know, it's hard to come to a real good conclusion, but it seems to me like the dead are buried in the earth, and that's where they stay, and that's spiritual and physical. And Tartarus, the old Greek ideology of that, and Jewish ideology, is that it's in the center of the earth. It's the deepest pit in the center of the earth. There are levels of hell, if you will, just as there are levels of heaven. Okay, only 3 though. We don't want to get 7 like the Mormons. We want to stick with the Bible. So there's Sheol and Hades and Tartarus, the bottomless pit. Okay, those kinds of terms. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to track the Nephilim. Because remember, the Nephilim are not the angels. The Nephilim are the descendants of the angels. The sin is the angels and the daughters, and the Nephilim are the descendants. And they were on the earth when men and women began to multiply, chapter 4 of Genesis, and then they go on. Okay? So we're going to track them. Verse 4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward when the sons of God came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These, the children, were the, and I see that little hay there? I'm going to start pointing that out because for whatever reason, the Holy Spirit says put the hay. It's the article. It means the, or a specific, it means something specific. It's delineating between something else. So, for instance, you go into Hy-Vee, there's a bunch of men there, and one man comes up, the manager comes up to you, and he speaks to you and helps you, let's say. I was going to say give you a bad time, but I'm trying to be nice. And so then you're coming in and you say, did you see that man, that man in Hy-Vee? Well, you're talking about, there was a bunch of men in Hy-Vee, right? But there's one man that helped you. He's a nice man, okay? And so that's kind of what's happening here. They're setting a set of people aside here. So the children were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Now, David's going to have men of renown. Remember, he has 40 mighty men. And Uriah was one of them. Okay, we know that. This is not them. This is a specific set of mighty men, all right? Now, I think maybe I did read this last time, didn't I? I can't remember this, but anyway, I find most attractive a combination of the angel view and the despot view. Fallen angels left their habitation and indwelt human despots and warriors, the great ones of the earth. We know from Daniel 10, 13, and 20 that great kings and kingdoms of the earth had princes ruling behind them, and powerful spirits with whom Michael had to fight. We also know from Ezekiel 28, 11 through 19, that the king of Tyre may have been associated in the prophet's mind with Satan, the anointed cherub. It is no surprise that in literature of the ancient Near East, kings were described as divine, half-divine, or demagogues. Pagans revered such great leaders as gods, and this is true, okay, or as offspring of the gods. In the Ugaritic, the sons of gods refer to members of the pantheon as well as great kings of the earth. In the Ugaritic legend of the dawn, the chief god of the pantheon, El, which in Hebrew means God, singular, is in danger of becoming senile. In a sacred rite of the birds, he seduces two human women. In one lewd world, got when this unparalleled violation took place. Furthermore, the story would also become a polemic, an argument, against subsequent beliefs of the pagans that giants, powerful rulers, and men of renown were of divine origin, and that immortality was achieved by hubris and immortality. Immortality. The entire cult of the Canaanites were centered on fertility rites. This is all true. By sympathetic magic in which people engaged in sexual intercourse with hero duels, temple slaves, at the temple. As Israel encountered such corruption, she had the law of God, which stressed the separation of such sexual activities from the sanctuary, and denied that divinity could be achieved by defying God's barriers. The argument would then be saying that the sons of God that the pagans often spoke of were not lesser gods of the pantheon who entered the world of humans for their pleasure. Rather, the sons of God were basically human beings. There may have been demonic or spirit activity or power behind them, but they were just another low order of humans. They're taking any woman they wished. The origin of harems, a question mark, was an attempt to satisfy their baser instincts. The offspring of these marriages may have been famous and powerful, but contrary to popular thinking, were not God kings. They were flesh, as the text states. They would die in due course, like all members of the human race. When God judged the world as he subsequently did, no giant, no alleged deity, and no pagan ideology would have power against him. God simply allotted the days and announced the end. Here then, humankind had overstepped the boundaries again, trying to assume the role of divinity and hoping to achieve immorality. I always think that's supposed to be immortality. Immortality. God, through Moses, set the record straight by confronting the mythological ideas directly. Do not believe the Gentile myths concerning the divine origin of the men of renown. In the end, all must die, for all are flesh, and the end of all is flesh. The passage goes on to say that those who survive the judgment and become immortal do so by grace alone. Moreover, those who are recipients of grace will walk with him in righteousness, not living according to the corrupt practices of the world. So, I want to summarize this in just a couple sentences. Alan P. Ross thinks that these are humans and that they took on these roles as divine kings or little gods, maybe with the help of spirits, okay? And what I'm saying is that's not what happened. What I'm saying is angels came to earth and demons were born from them. Most of the world, and this guy's really good, Alan P. Ross, even another great book I got from Dallas Seminary. The guy is a wonderful preacher, pastor and teacher. And other people cannot buy in to this issue. But even if you don't use the book of Enoch, even if you don't use those other books, you still got a major problem. Amos says they were huge. The book of Numbers says they were huge. They were as tall as cedars. Okay? We were like grasshoppers to them. We know that the end of the line, we know how big Goliath was. He was 9.5 feet. We know how big Og, king of Bashan, who was the last of the Rephaim. He was at least 13 feet. He had a bed of about 14.5 feet. So he was probably bigger than 13. Okay? I don't know. I don't want to hit the bedboard when I lay down. But I don't want 1.5 feet either, you know? So I'm going to throw some caveats into this. If indeed, as he says, demonic or fallen angel activity was behind these men, which he agrees with that, who took women, then indeed this is an undertaking of evil heavenly principalities. Men either gave them control or lost it. But it is indeed heavenly, and therefore the sons of God, fallen angels, are responsible. Okay? They are responsible however you come down on this, heavenly beings are responsible. We're going to see some other places where heavenly beings get involved. Yes?
Okay, so I just want to make sure, so when the beings came down and the women took any women that they wished,
Yeah.
then the offspring born, they were large.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just assuming that all those women must have died in childbirth. You know, if that child, baby was so big, I'm just assuming that.
And that has been brought up before, and I don't even know. It doesn't say that. I think Zillah was I think Genesis chapter 4, I think Zillah is a bad person. It was a woman. She had kids. She had 2 kids. So how do you get 2? I don't know. So that's one thing. Another thing is, you know, how big's a dinosaur egg? I mean, I don't know where we want to go with this. All we want to do for sure is to make sure that we stay scripturally. We want to stay with the Bible. And Amos says they were as tall as cedars. And I go out here to Yankton, South Dakota, and find a cedar tree, which they're hard to find. They are around, but they're not 10 feet. They're bigger than 10 feet. All right? When you go out west, when you go to Lebanon, Lebanon was famous for cedars. How big were their cedars? They built the temples out of it. So no, we were just talking about, a cedar tree when it was only, 30 days old. That's not what Amos is saying. And besides, you're not going to be a grasshopper to that either. So we have to, I still think about, and I don't mean to be crude here, okay? But I still think about the plumbing, okay? How does it work? Can angels just appear, and when they do appear, they can eat, sleep, drink, and do everything else? I mean, God ate when he showed up with Abraham, okay? And so you've got these things that are very difficult to understand. This is the way I see it. This is where I've come down. Before all this happened, knowing everything was going to happen, God said to the angels before he made them, he said, we're going to make these angels, and they're going to be ministering spirits. And they're going to be able to appear as men. They never appear as women. They're going to be able to appear as men. Okay. And so we're drawing up the plans for angel number 1, Michael. Michael's going to appear before Daniel. So, okay, Lord, let's draw up the plans for Michael, the body in Michael. What part do you want me to leave out? He doesn't need male parts. What? I mean, where do we stop? So what I'm suggesting is that they had the ability, and it just seems reasonable, that they had the ability to appear as men, and when they appeared as men, they were all man. They were all man. From the hairs on their chest to the hairs on their head, to not being 5'2", but 6'4", or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So that's just the way we have to do that, and kind of take it for what the Bible says. Here's an added note. The Septuagint refers to giants 38 times, as they categorize all these tribes into the one word gigantus, which again means earthborn or something to that effect. It does not mean giant per se, but they are large, okay? Notice the hay shows up again. These were the mighty men, the men of renown. They were singled out at particular. They were famous, or better yet, infamous. They left a particular mark on humanity. Recall Enoch's expression of them. They seem to have devastated mankind until God rid the earth of them. And that's what Amos says. We know that Abraham's going to fight them. Caleb and Joshua are going to fight them. The other Israelites. We know that Esau's tribes fought them. And I'll tell you, we'll get to that. Some of these other things happened, but God takes the credit because he wants them wiped out. And he sent his men after them, okay? God's men fought them. Abraham, Moses, Joshua, Caleb, David, and their troops. Numbers 13:33. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves the grasshoppers as we so seemed to them. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron. By the way, you're going to see Hebron over and over. Hebron is a nest of these things. Now watch. Where does Abraham set his home? Hebron. Where does David go to set his first kingdom for 7 years? Hebron. Hebron is spiritually important. They went up, by the way, today, one of the largest, if I want to say Arab, can't remember if it's a museum or if it's one of their, it might be one of their mosques, it might be a mosque. You know where they built it? Over Abraham's tomb in Hebron. So the Arabs are there, you know. So it's very strange stuff. There's so much spiritual stuff happening behind the scenes. It's just so hard to grasp sometimes. They went up to the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ahiman and Sheshai and Talmai, the descendants of the Anak, dwelled. It had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And I think I did read this last week because I said, I want to find out, I need to study Zoan. Because why is it named there? It has to be very important. There's a huge link between Zoan and Hebron. And I'm going to give you what I think it is. Okay, here's my initial thought. Zoan was important in Egypt. And I'm talking about to somebody like Osiris or Nimrod, you know, the Nimrod descendants. Zoan was something spiritual in Egypt. Those people moved from Egypt, and they moved from there and moved to to Hebron. Now, so you get to Hebron, and who's in Hebron? The Anak. And who are the Anak? The descendants of the Nephilim. So, again, I like extra biblical stuff, and we want to use it. But if you study enough, you can track this through the Bible. And Hebron means something very important. Verse 28, nevertheless, the people living in that land are strong. Here's those descriptive terms. They are strong, and the cities are large and fortified. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. So now you've got the Nephilim, the Anak, and the descendants of Anak there. Okay? All we have to do is continue to go down and trace these. Deuteronomy 1:28, where can we go? Our brothers have made our hearts melt, saying the people are larger and taller than we are. The cities are large with walls up to the heavens. We even saw the descendants of the Anakim there. The Amins dwell there in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakim. The people are strong and tall, the descendants of the Anakim. You know about them, and you have heard it. Who can stand up to the sons of Anak? Okay, so that's clear enough. That's clear enough that these large beings were on the planet. How big were they? We can only go definitively by Amos and by what we hear and see here, by seeing Gog and Gath, the men of Gath down the road. But they were much taller, and I think that over time they lose. They're not human, so they're going to fade out. They're going to die out. They're not going to be strong, which I'm going to get to in Daniel chapter 2. And also they're going to be killed out as God kills them out. Joshua, by the way, real quick, as God kills them out. And I remember, don't you remember when you were little? And would have somebody going through the Old Testament, and I praise the Lord, I was in a church that taught the Old Testament. And they would teach the Old Testament about tribes being wiped out, wipe out the Anakim, don't leave a descendant, don't leave a child. And you and I would go, no, wait a minute out there. I mean, how come any of us are still in church after hearing that as a child? It's like nightmares, I'm not going to do this. Who's this God that we're dealing with? But there's something really, really spiritual happening behind this. And the Lord says, I can't save them anyway. And they're going to be out to kill my kids. I want them wiped off the planet. I just want them wiped out. And that's what happened. And when we see, this is why, this is why some of the people outside the church don't like us. Because they say, your God is a God of blood. Well, thank God he's a God of blood, because Jesus died on the cross, and without his blood, we wouldn't be saved. It says in Colossians that he made peace through his blood. Without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sins, Hebrews 9:22. So, thank God he's a man of blood, or a God of blood. But he's a God of peace and love as well, for those who come to him. So Joshua 11:30-21. In that time, Joshua proceeded to eliminate the Anakim from the hill country of, there's that word again, Hebron, Debir, and Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah and of Israel. Joshua devoted them to destruction. Joshua devoted them to destruction. That is a religious term. That's exactly what Saul was supposed to do to Agag and his people, the Agites. And he didn't do it. He was supposed to devote them to destruction. It's in the obedience of God, in the worship of God, I'm going to slaughter this lamb. I'm going to slaughter these people. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube takes this one off. Because this is our God. But they need to understand, we need to understand that they weren't humans. They weren't human. They weren't salvageable, and they were out to kill his people. And so it was defense, okay? And besides, he's creator, and God called the ball, and we're gonna do it, right? Joshua 14:12. Now therefore give me this hill country. This is Caleb, that the Lord promised me on that day. For you yourself heard that the Anakim were there with great and fortified cities. Perhaps with the Lord's help, I will drive them out as the Lord had spoken. Now right here, you and I, if we start to believe this and understand it, you and I get a great perspective of people like Caleb and Joshua and Moses and David and others. Jonathan, Abraham, these people were brave. These people were brave. I don't care how big he is. If God wants me dead, I'll be dead. If he wants me to succeed, I'm going to succeed. How? Again, going off to the idea why we started these deeper studies, how big do we want our God? Well, help me whip this 5'2" guy or 5'4" or whatever, The woman at Hy-Vee was yelling at me, and I can't handle it. It's like, Lord, okay, I can do all things through Christ Jesus. All things. How big is the person? I don't care. Now, we don't fight with sword, and we're not going at war with people. But the point is, this is history. This happened in the past. And if that happened, and God said, Joshua, go do this, and it happened, I go, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? Well, I want you to get up, and I want you to sing on the stage. Like, to some of us, like, right, Jeannie? I was like, that isn't, you know how tall that giant is? I want you to get up and preach the word. I want you to go serve this person. I want you to love that person. Those are giants, okay? We can conquer them. Sometimes we think, well, maybe Joshua had it easy. 1 Samuel 17:4. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. So he was about 9.5 feet. Okay? Amos 2:9. Yet it was I who destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height. So see, there's another term. So anybody got Amorite on your list? So now you got the Goliath of Gath, you got the Amorites, you got the Anakim, you got the Emim. You see where we're going? I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of cedars, and who was strong as the oaks. Now listen. By my garbage can every year, there's little oak trees that bloom. They're about that big by the end of the first part of the season. And I can pull those things out by the roots, right? That's what God meant, right? As strong as that little tiny oak. You and I know what oak trees are. Now, were they as big as oaks and as strong as oaks? All I can say this is relatively, yes. Yes. Relatively, as compared to men, they were as strong as oaks, and they were as high as cedars. We just need to take this. This is a biblical word. Amos is a great book, and we probably should go through Amos soon. Okay? So, what we have here, and I've changed this. I said, okay, I really got to dig into this, and I got to get this right. So I did this, I did some work a couple years ago here, and then I handed something out recently, and I said, I'm not happy with my work here. I need to go and trace these guys out.
On my sheet, I've got 6 or 7 tribes of giants, where it shows 6 on the screen.
That's what I'm saying. I went and hammered it out. I went and changed it, okay? So watch what happens here, right? We know the Nephilim. That's where they all come from. So we've got that down, right? We know the Anakim, because we just went through Deuteronomy. It's mentioned 15 times. The Anakim are mentioned 15 times. And we know that they came from the Nephilim. The Bible specifically says that. The Horites came from them. Deuteronomy 2, they're mentioned there. The Emites, that's the Emim we saw earlier. Emites, same word. Genesis 14 and Deuteronomy 2. The Rephaim, we know that. That's used 18 times. Okay? So to me it looks like it's the Nephilim, the Rephaim, and then the Anakim, or the Anakim and the Rephaim, they're descendants, and they kind of split out. And then we have another long term called the Zamzumines, but they came by the Amalekites. Okay? So I wanted, because they're mentioned in 2 different places. And yet, if you look at them, they look like they might be the same tribe. So I just need to be careful that I'm not adding an extra tribe here. And then the Zuzims. Now I wanted to say, well, the Zuzims, maybe that's the Zamzumins, but it's not what it says. They're linked up twice there. And then these affiliated or propagated with dozens more. I want to suggest something very strange to you, okay? And again, if I did this, we wouldn't get out of here till probably July. I know that Esau married into some tribes of the Ishmaelite tribes, the Canaanite tribes. Actually, his descendants, I think, married into the Ishmaelite tribes. But he married into the Canaanite tribes. We know he took Horite wives. Look up here. Deuteronomy 2:12. He took Horite wives. Where were the Horites? I'd like to go back to that. I'm not going to go back there right now, but if you remember, the Horites were right by on the other side of the sea, the Dead Sea, just to the southeast. Okay? Those were the Horites. So what I'm saying here, this is what I'm saying. Esau moved in and he conquered that area. And he probably killed a bunch of giants. But the question is, did he mate with them? Did his people mate with them? Because he conquered them. We know it says he conquered them. He doesn't say he wiped them all out. So we don't know how much intermingling goes on here. And so that they change their names. A Nephilim comes down, they mix with a tribe, they say, well, let's call ourselves the Anakim. Okay, we're the Anakim. Then the Anakim says, well, let's have some kids, and then they go over there and they take a tribe, and they mix, and they say, well, let's call ourselves the Horites. So I think that's what's happening here, okay? And so it's very difficult to go out there and figure out exactly which tribes were intermingling. We know that the giants, the Philistine, Gath, was amongst the Philistines. He was a descendant of the Rapha, we're going to see. So
any of their descendants then
yep.
would not be human?
No.
Okay.
No.
Even
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like to me. But again, I think that they get killed out and that they die out. They get smaller and that seed, see, I think that seed dies out. Okay? And Og was the last of the Rephaim. So he got killed out. He was killed. And Goliath was the last of the Philistine, the sons, he's a son of the Rapha, we're going to see, because his brothers are. So the point is that I don't think that their seed mixes well. Daniel chapter 2. I think it's bad seed. I think there's a problem with it. God said, that's not going to last. That's not the way I made it, and it is going to die out. So I think that's a big part of it. But that's speculation. We know they get smaller. Yeah.
So is it conceivable that if the seed died out, then not, but otherwise is it conceivable that there are still some?
You talk to some, watch this now, okay? You talk to some, and they will say that there's descendants of the Nephilim in the blood of the Philistines and the Canaanites. Who are they? So I don't want to go there. My opinion is that it died out. But here's something else. Some make a case that it's going to happen again. Because something comes out of the pit in Revelation chapter 6. And they do horrible stuff. Now that's their case. I don't want to make that case. That to me is going beyond what is written. And so they can make that case and have my interest to some extent, but I don't want to make that case, okay? Jesus will say that as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be on the planet again? Well, what was it like in the days of Noah? The Nephilim were on the planet. So that's where they start, and you can make that case. Well, you know what? I just caught myself in, not a lie, but I just caught myself. I've said this. Jesus is going to meet Nimrod again. He's going to meet the Assyrian. He's going to meet this man, this beast, who is supposedly dead, but he's brought back to life supposedly again. Who is he? What does he look like? Is he a clone? Something is very, very, very strange about the beast, the man. He's very strange. And I would not put it past the devil, because remember, the beast is going to have access to all kinds of stuff. He's going to be very wise, be able to unlock riddles and stuff, and he's going to do some very, very odd stuff. And I'll give you one example of some of these, like I can't remember, Skiba, write his last name down, Skiba. He gets into this stuff big time. One of their thoughts is that when the United States conquered Baghdad, that they went into the tombs and they took some of the articles and stuff, and they found, I can't remember if it was in Egypt or in Baghdad, but they found the head of Osiris, they found some body parts, they found these things, and that the Vatican has access to some of that stuff, and they're going to clone whatever this being is. And all I'm saying is, it gets really strange in Revelation, and I wouldn't put it past them. We don't know that for fact. But some people make a case that there's going to be some cloning and some of that kind of stuff going on. Okay? Here's 11 individual giants. An Anakite was the father. He's a father called Arba. He's found in Joshua 15. So he's the father of Anakim. And then his 3 sons, so see, he's the father, and then there's 4 Anakim in Joshua 15, 14, and those are the ones that Joshua and Caleb go fight. Og, king of Bashan, is the last of the Rephaim in Deuteronomy 3:11. Goliath is found in 1 Samuel 17. Ishbi-Benob is found in 2 Samuel 21:16. I think that's the one with 6 fingers. That's why the 6 fingers come out. It seems like these, or a lot of them, had 6 fingers, and people point to that today, even still today. Soph, in that same area there, Soph, 2 Samuel 21:18, and Goliath's brother in 2 Samuel 21:19. And again, I want to say this. Do you know who killed these giants? Okay, David killed Goliath. Who killed 7, 8, 9, and 10? Joab and his men. Where was David when this was happening? He was with Bathsheba. Why did he pick up 5 stones in the river? Because he knew there was Goliath and his 4 brothers. So I heard a wonderful teacher again say that's not the case, but here's the deal. In 1 Chronicles, just look at 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles. Compare those stories. In one, David is not with Bathsheba. In Chronicles, he's not with Bathsheba. In Samuel, he is. Okay? So in Chronicles, God is saying, okay, in Chronicles, I want to line out who David is, the type of the Messiah. And when David did not go out to war, Joab went. And then when Joab took his troops and killed those people on the word of David, which is a type of the Messiah, which is the good part. There's our bad, of course, but that are not the type of the Messiah. But it's Joab and his men that killed these 4. And then, it's really interesting that they take the crown off of one, and guess what it has in it? A stone, a big jewel, and it's called a stone. And guess what David does? He takes the stone. You see the connections? He should have killed these 4, and he was disobeying God. So the 4th one in 2 Samuel 21, and then it says this. These were the descendants of the Rapha from Gath. Now, watch. The Rapha. This is singular. There was a particular, this is the article again there. There was a certain Rapha in Gath. And he had 4 sons, or 5, if you count Goliath. So you see what's happening here? This was somebody very particular. He was one of the Rephaim. And then he had these descendants, okay? Other possible descendants, Nimrod, king of Babel. He built Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Kala, and Rezin. Look at all these cities that he built and these regions that he built. And how did he do it? Because he was a mighty man, and he ran before the presence of the Lord. He was a mighty warrior. It's a bad term. Amraphael, the king of Shinar, his name, and we're going to get to these later, his name means one that speaks darkness or something like that. Arioch is another one, king of Elasar. Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, that's Persia. And then Tidal, king of the nations in Genesis 10:8. And those are speculations, okay? Watch Joshua 10. Adonizedek and his people were greatly alarmed because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities. It was larger than Ai, and all its men were mighty. So Adonizedek was afraid because Gibeon fell and all this stuff was happening around Ai, okay? That's why when Joshua goes and conquers Ai, it's probably a big deal. He's conquering giants right off the bat. And I think that is what's happening there, okay? Genesis 10:8. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on the earth to be a mighty man. In the Septuagint, that's Gigantus. He was again, the Septuagint says Gigantus hunter before the Lord. Therefore it said, like Nimrod, a Gigantus hunter before the Lord. That's the word that they use. And I'm suggesting that that is a really good possibility. Now, when we get there, I'll probably try to track this down again. But Nimrod shows up about 135 years after the flood, somewhere in there. And then he grows up to be a mighty man. I think that he takes his people, they subdue the people around them. Let's build this city before God. And he's doing it in the face of God because God killed his earth and maybe some of his descendants. He's mad. That's what it sounds like, and that's what I would say. That's what Enoch and some of those other books say, and it just makes kind of sense. But he will build about 10 cities along the Euphrates, and we're going to find out in Abraham's day, that is a really, really bad area. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, King James, Daniel chapter 2. Yeah, this is the mixed seed. Daniel chapter 2. And we'll end probably right around here. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. Now this is in the New King James Version, and the King James Version is the same. And it is a right version. Remember, use multiple translations because some translations will not bear this out. But it's important that you read it literally, then you have to deal with the facts. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of the iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. This is the fourth beast. As you saw iron mixed, or the feet of the statue, I should be more particular. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, watch, they will mingle with the seed of men. Now you can look in your translations, and in most of them it doesn't say that, but that's what the Hebrew says. Or, I'm sorry, the Aramaic. The Aramaic. They will mingle with the seed of men. Now you gotta, at that point, you gotta stop and say, that doesn't, just like, some of our questions here, that doesn't make any sense. And so I'm going to go with the ESV on this one because I don't want to study it or I'm afraid or whatever. No, don't do that. Try to figure out what it means. But they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom. Now watch, this is important. Verse 44. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Okay, time out. Because it says in the days of those kings. Has that happened yet? Has God set up his kingdom on earth? No. So his kingdom is coming in the days of this mixed seed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall be break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever, inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain, I think is what
I remember at seminary that was discussed as a union of the Catholic Church and communism.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't wash, does it? The seed of men is always physical seed. It's always physical. Now, it has to do with something spiritual, but just from Genesis chapter 3, remember, this is called treasures of thread. And when you find the seed in Genesis chapter 3, their seed will contend with your seed. That's where it goes back to. That's where it goes back to. You have the seed contending with one another. And so, again, something is very strange in Daniel chapter 2, Genesis chapter 6, and is it coming again? I wouldn't put it past the devil or the Lord to allow it. So, is there any questions now? We should probably quit. I'm going to get another thing rolling here. So, all right? Okay, let me pray here. Lord, thank you for your grace and your mercy. Thank you for your word. We love your word. We don't understand it. It scares us. But like you said to Joshua, be of strong heart and courageous and strong. So help us, Lord, we pray. We love you so much. Help us during the Bible News Update. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to pick up, I will remember this now, Genesis 14:5.